Hello, I'm Drew Banks. I'm head of international at Prezi, and I'm responsible for international market expansion, growing into all other markets with the exception of US. The question I'll be talking about is, when is the appropriate time for a startup to go international? And how do you do this in the most cost-effective way? The question of when to go international is actually multiple questions. Does international mean to you the US market? Does the question of going international mean opening an office in the US? Or is it truly about the global marketplace? First, you need to ask that question, and then you need to understand if your product or service is appropriate for all of those markets. Is it appropriate for the US? And is it appropriate for the global market? After you answer those questions, you need to understand what you need to do to penetrate those markets. For Prezi, the question of whether to go international happened very early. So Prezi is a hybrid consumer app, business app, cloud-based. So the moment we launched, and it has a really deep viral component to it, the moment we launched, Prezi expanded internationally, and we were aware of that international expansion. So the first question we asked ourselves was, how important is the US market? And to capture the US market, do we need to open an office in the US? Our answer to that question was, yes, it was a risk. It was really big risk at the time because it was in our first year of operations. But for the presentation market, you have to own, if you want to be a global player, you have to own the US market. And there's a second benefit of opening an office in the US, especially in Silicon Valley. You get to enter the ecosystem of the center of tech startups in the world. And the experience gained by entering that ecosystem is critical. So the question of internationally was not just about market expansion, it was about gaining that expertise. Once we opened that office and continued to expand internationally, we then looked at the international US split. So for Prezi, the definition of international is everything but the US. That split in terms of users and revenue is higher internationally than it is in the US. It's about a 60-40 split. That impelled us to actually create an international team to expand those markets further, those markets being non-US markets. That was about in our fourth year of operations. Before you decide to go international, you first want to understand if your product has international market potential. For some products that's easy. You see organic growth internationally. But if you have a B2B product, you may not know that through just organic growth. You may need to do market research and understand whether or not the market has the potential. The first markets I would launch into are markets that have the same language as your product is currently localized in. For a global product, hopefully that language is English. Hopefully you've launched your product in English, and then you expand to the English-speaking countries of Canada, Australia, the Nordics, South Africa, and you see how your product does then. Then you go after markets which need language localization. Choose one language. First, establish a baseline in that market. Localize in the language. See how your product does after localization. And then hire PR and see how your product does after launching with a PR campaign. Then you have 3 different data points that you can compare to understand how each one of those things helped you grow in that market. And then you can expand that to other markets. One of the biggest expenses in launching international is PR. It's very important to find the right PR firm. The way to find a good PR firm is to benchmark other companies like yours that have hired PR in those countries. I also want to recommend you need to get very comfortable firing PR firms. So if you choose the wrong one, which you will in some countries, you need to analyze that quickly and be comfortable firing and hiring another one. Finally, if you're constrained on cash, which most startups are, try hiring a PR firm only for launching in that market, so for 1 month, and then see how that does. And then before you go into a monthly retainer relationship with that PR firm, which all PR firms want, they want you to commit to a monthly retainer right off the bat. But before you do that, see how the launch activities go first.